you're going to be our moderator today?
Seems like it.
Sandra is my colleague, and she is much brighter than I am. I barely speak English. She speaks multiple languages. And if, by the way, when you're responding, if it would be more comfortable to respond in Slovenian, please feel free to do that. And then Sandra will explain to me, you know, in small words, so I can understand what you guys said. Good, and let's go through some material, and hopefully, with a little bit of luck, also kind of enjoy one another as we get through this.
Shall we welcome everybody now that everybody joined? I think that would be a good idea to start like that. Should we start in Slovene like the last time? What do you think?
Well, however, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, because more than one participant is non-Slovene.
Definitely.
So I think it would be polite to continue in English.
Absolutely. So let's then go down to the workshop. So welcome everybody, and good evening. And let me just shortly introduce Bill, because now we heard everybody's introduction just about the Bills. Bill is actually coming from the Open Book Coaching, the company that works for 27 years. Is it right? 27 years already, and it's been working with around 400 companies on this open book solutions for actually more small and medium-sized companies in United States, and actually all around the world. So Bill has a big pile of experience in this area that we are going to talk about today. So let's just start with the presentation, and thank you everybody who actually took some time to fill up our questionnaire about open books coaching and open book solutions. So I think we are going to see tonight even some of Slovene data throughout our workshop. So I think we are not going to be too long, so I think it's the best that we just start and go. It's going to take us about 45 minutes to 1 hour to go through all of it.
Good, and with that,
yeah.
So with everybody, with a little bit of luck, everybody can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. Good. The thing I wanted to start with is the following question. I said this was going to be interactive, okay? So here are two companies. These companies are identical. They're in the same part of the world. They have the same technology. They serve the same customers, okay? They draw their employees from the same community. Everything is the same about these two companies, save one thing. In the company on the left, employees are hired hands. They're there to do a job. I'm not saying good or bad. They're there like most companies have their employees. On the company on the right, the employees are trusted partners. They understand the economics of the company. They drive the economics of the company, and they participate in the economics of the company. I want to ask you some questions. First, which company do you think you'd prefer being a customer of?
Well, I guess it's obvious from the the right one.
But say some more about that, David. Why is it obvious?
It's feeling like that that commitment to the customers and to, let's say, satisfying their needs, because they understand deeper how is that satisfaction of the buyer important to the economic prospects or benefits of the company, is, let's say, more logical, more understandable to trust partners. Okay, I'm waiting for the number 3.
Okay, well, yeah, to be sure. So hold that thought. Okay, which company do you think, if you were an employee, Peter, I'm going to ask you this question. If you got to choose, you're going to be an employee of one or the other of these companies, which company would you prefer to be an employee of?
Sorry, Bill, I had some problems hearing you.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
repeat?
I'll try again. Which company, if you were an employee?
You froze a little bit. That's okay. Who would you rather work with?
Right. In other words, if you were going to be hired, both offered you a job, which company would you take the job with?
I mean, probably you're expecting me to answer the company where I'm dealing with trusted partners.
But why?
No, I'm just saying it can. I would say it can be both. It depends on the culture of the company. So you can also, I believe, you can also have a very sound culture in the company where there are no employees that are owners.
Peter, it's a great answer. Okay. Now let me ask the follow-on question. Okay. If you had employees that preferred to be treated like hired hands versus employees that preferred to be treated as trusted partners, which set of employees do you think would be more capable?
Yeah, I believe that for sure ESOP is a way that where you can make a step forward. You know, you can go one level up in terms of motivation and so on, but you cannot just look it in this way. I believe that you have to be a bit broader here, because you have to take into account also the effect on the value creation. For example, if the company is creating value, then the people will be driven by this ESOP. If it's not creating that much value, then probably the motivation will not be more thinking as employees and not so much as owners.
Well, we'll stay with that for a second. That you actually bridge to the question up at top. Where would you invest? See, you're right in what you're saying there, but the question ends up being, do you think it's neutral in terms of which company would be actually end up being worth more?
From the valuation point of view, I would say that you have to make rational decisions, based on the financials. So if the EBITDA and the enterprise value EBITDA multiplicator is X, then it's clear.
Peter is an analyst. He doesn't believe in these people crap. Okay, that's not what drives businesses. Okay, I'm an analyst. I understand businesses. Okay, and part of what I would say is stay tuned. The data does not support your position, Peter. But for the moment, I'm saying that as I'll come back to prove the point. Okay, I'll come back to prove the point. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we could just go to this question. You mentioned once that you had somebody to choose the left company, the one that has hired hands.
Yeah.
Can you explain us what was there?
Thank you.
What was the case?
Yeah, it's thank you, Sandra. I've used this slide a number of times, and when it comes to what company would you invest in, I get two responses. One is the Peter analyst stuff. I don't have enough data. I don't know. Okay. But I got one guy, most of the time people say, well, trusted partners, they're going to considerably outperform. and therefore I'm going to make more money. Right. I was in Texas. Things are big in Texas, in the States. Okay. And the guy told me, oh, I'd clearly invest in the company on the left. I said, you'd invest in the company on the left? He said, oh, yes. I said, why would you invest in the company on the left? He said, I'll be able to buy that company for a song. And then I'll convert it to a company like a company on the right, and I'll make a fortune. By the way, he was not a financial analyst. I asked him, what kind of business you in? He says, I buy and sell companies. I said, really? It's always kind of interesting. And by the way, my applause for the interactive nature that we're having on this. We have to go to David, because he mentioned he was waiting for number 3. David, make your comment about which one would you prefer to be a manager or an owner of?
Okay, first of all, there is a difference, obvious difference between management and owner, at least.
Fair enough.
Well, I think that at least I cannot speak from my life experience. Obviously, I'm not very young, but still, I was not, for the time being, I was not working yet in a company that everybody, or at least a majority of them, shared. And one thing, and the second is that, which I'm quite sure that you're already familiar with, in this part of the world where we were ex-Yugoslavia, so we have still some, let's say, not that bright memories on that self-management regime, which was actually not that self-managed. It was just cover up, at least in my perspective. However, from the management, okay, I think that the obvious advantage of having employees as trusted partners is the one that sharing the same goal should be easier, because if you have the clear vision of what we want to achieve, then everything we do, and if of course it makes sense that it supports that vision, then it should be easier. However, this is, I think, theory. I mean, in practice, even to set a vision in the left side of the company is not that easy as it sounds to be, because there are many backpacks on people. If you don't have like a team from yesterday, but from you're together for the last 2 or 3 decades, there's a lot of history you went by together, and people, of course, do have a collective memory of what is in our nature or in our blood and what is not. And overnight, go to some completely different mindset. People just don't buy it. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that, David. The third company I ever worked with, I've worked with about 400 companies in the last 27 years, large and small, literally all over the world, although mostly in North America. The third company I worked with was the Zambian Consolidated Copper Mine. There may be a worse culture than the mining culture, British bureaucracy, 40% HIV positive culture that existed. Because it was awful. And your notion of the collective memory is so true. It's so true. It was amazing how quickly people started very skeptically, but broken down into all the smaller businesses. This was 50,000 miners in Zambia, Africa. But when we broke it down into small business units, and then they came up with what winning really meant. And they came up with the scoreboards. And then we told them that they could, in effect, share in a percent of the incremental wealth that was created. this heavily union environment, yes, Buona chieftain culture, British bureaucracy, awful, and I mean it when I say 40% HIV positive, unsafe environment. It was amazing how people started embracing it because they felt like they were in control. Skeptical at the start, but it's sort of like they wanted to be in control. So they were skeptical about it. What I'm going to do is say, first of all, I've been in the business of moving companies from the left to the right. That's what I do. And my compensation has been tied to their results. So I'm a pragmatist. Some people talk about open book management, which means, oh, you need to share all information, like share everybody's salary. I don't believe that. I have not found that to be effective. So I don't do that. I look at the things that work. It may be the engineer in me. I look at the stuff that work, and then let's build on that. With that being the case, what I want to share with you is the data. Peter, I told you the data doesn't support your position. This is the data, okay? If what you do is you look at the economic engagement, another way of talking about, remember, go back, right? This trusted partner is another way of saying that is economic engagement. We have a tool, a survey that allows us to measure within various companies how economically engaged their companies are. What we did is applied that tool to a group of emergency clinics, to a group of entrepreneurial organizations, to a group of California restaurant associations, to NCEO members, National Center for Employee Owners, and this is a kind of higher tech IT scaling up group. And what we looked at was the top quartile in economic engagement versus the average versus the bottom quartile. And particularly, these numbers are the average profit growth in the last 3 years. And what you see consistently is the top quartile is nominally speaking about double the average, and the average is substantially higher than the bottom. So the data doesn't support that economic engagement is neutral with respect to financial performance. The data says economic engagement appears, even across disparate companies, to have a noticeable effect on economic performance. That's consistent with my experience. I'll show you later today a variety of companies I've worked with and examples of what their results have been. I can also show you, this is within one group. This happens to be the clinics, okay? This is the individual companies, and you can see there's noise in the data, but part of what's going on here is you can see how as the companies down here, by and large, are low in economic engagement and relatively low in profit growth. And the companies up here are high in economic engagement and high in profit growth. And we had 7 companies from Slovenia that actually filled out this survey. So I'm kind of treating them as one. On average, they were about average, maybe a little above in terms of economic engagement and a little bit slower in profit growth. What I read from that is that these 7 companies have some opportunity to improve their profit growth by applying these economic engagement principles. But it's not just principles. When I say that, let me tell you a next level of definition. to this. Economic engagement is really the sum of customer engagement, economic understanding of the employees in the business, transparency of that information across the business, economic compensation, meaning the employees participate in improvements in the business performance, and employee engagement, largely turnover and relationship with management. Each of those things is what overall economic engagement is. Did that make sense, guys? And part of what we do is when we survey companies, there are 3 questions associated with customer engagement, 3 economic understanding, 3 economic transparency, and so forth. That's how we start to gauge the economic engagement against the performance. Now, one of the things that I found kind of surprising, this again is the average of the Slovenian companies. The customer engagement on average was pretty low. That, in my estimation, is a very big deal. And I'll explain why in this next slide.
Bill, can we maybe just stop here for a second and tell something about to the people? How is this survey started, and what was the idea about this benchmarking? I think that's important. That's important and interesting to discuss.
Let me see if I'm answering the question. I'm working with Harvard Business School, and when I first started working with them, I explained the kind of work that I did. And inevitably, I was talking about all the various companies I've worked with. What they said is, that's fine, Bill, but if we're going to change the world, we need to do research. We need to test the hypothesis. So the hypothesis is economic engagement drives business performance. The way you test that is you gather data, which is what this is about. And this is the data gathered at the individual company level. And this is the kind of the reports we generate for each individual company. I just aggregated all of the 7 responses here. Was that the point you were looking?
I just wanted to state the point that this is really the research that you started with Harvard Business Review, and those data has a strong base in this research that you were doing over the years.
Thank you, Sandra. And the other thing that you'll note, and this is against with the Slovenian, this is live data. This is real numbers. Okay. What I found to be interesting, and the reason I highlighted the customer engagement, is in general, the scores on the employee engagement, for instance, were pretty good. Okay. That was not the case with customer engagement. And in my estimation, that's a big deal because, next slide, okay, individual companies don't define value. They don't define the economics. Customers define the economics. Mm-hmm. What customers value defines the economics of the company, of any particular company. This is generically the case. But part of what, and I've got a case example that I may share with you if we have time. One of the things that I find is when you go about getting input from your customers, you inevitably increase the repeat and referral revenue from them. Well, that's like a big deal. I've yet to run into a company that didn't benefit from having more repeat and referral revenue. So there, by the way, everyone will get these slides, so you're welcome. These are the various things that the reason economic engagement works is, one, if you're close to the customers, you know what they value and you're going to get more repeat business. I'll go to, if the employees understand the business economics, they can make autonomous decisions. They don't have to wait for someone to tell them what to do. They know what winning is. They can make those decisions and so forth. I want to kind of keep up the pace here because there's a fair amount of material that I'd like to get through. How do you realize those opportunity? I think maybe the best thing to do is actually use the kind of case example to bring this to life. But one of the things that I put together here is there is a customer outreach script that we've used with a lot of companies. So this is a tool. And for those of you that are running your own company, I would encourage you to consider, if you don't already have a vehicle by which you're getting on some regular basis customer information, I would encourage you to consider using this. It's free. I mean, I'm providing it here, okay? And I'll show you how it worked in a case example. There's also an ebook that we have that you can in effect use to help you improve your business. And then the other thing is true is we've written a lot of articles. And so if you have a challenge in customer engagement, as is the case in the 7 Slovenian companies that I was looking at, then what are your companies thinking? You'll never know unless you ask, or that which is an ENG article, or the simplest and cheapest way to leave your customers in the dust, which is a Forbes article. Those would be good reference articles for you. Continuing along, as I said, I've worked with a variety of different companies, so not surprisingly, I've just put a snapshot together of companies where we've had a great deal of success. I'm going to try in just a few minutes to go through the first one. This is an engineering company. You could think of it either as, David, a division of a larger company, or I forgot, we've got another individual who has a 55-person company. You could think of it as an autonomous company. This is sort of the process that we used to work with this company. So there was the diagnostic front end of getting employee input, senior management input, customer input using that customer information script, and financial trend analysis. We used this to figure out what were the key issues in the company, but also to galvanize the organization because they were all participating in that. Once we figured out what winning is, the ongoing goal was to drive further results, in which case, if we were successful in doing that, both they and me would get compensated more. So I was reasonably fired up about them being successful. This is kind of bullet points of, and this was about 9 months in, I guess 10 months in, their 2 largest customers, this is an engineering company. Their 2 largest customers substantially reduced the amount of work they needed. That was a big deal because those 2 customers, they were overly concentrated. That represented about 80% of their work. They started, so this is the team, okay? They used that script because we had to turn, in those days, it started with only about 10 engineers. It was a smaller company. We had to turn 10 engineers into 10 marketers because we needed more business. I mean, we were really short. They used this script and started calling folks, and in just the first 9 calls they made, they got 8 referrals. Now, it didn't turn into contracts right away, but it did turn into contracts. That's something they've now done on an ongoing basis, which drives, this is their history from at least a financial standpoint. So Peter, you'll like this, it's financial, you know, so it'll be good, okay? Thank you for smiling just now. Their sales are up 3-fold from 2013, and their profits are up 4-fold. So that would be a good thing, okay? The company is clearly worth more. It's also worth more for 2 other reasons. everybody is involved. This is the weekly meeting. I've never actually been in the same room with these folks. Okay, we do everything remotely, but each week they update a rolling forecast of each client, thinking 3 and 4 months out, what is it going to be? And everybody sees that, okay? They see exactly what's going on. So we understand how our business is doing. And frankly, the other thing that's true is the proposals. It used to be just Jeff and Richard. Those were the two owners that founded the company. They did all of the proposals. Now you can see the number of folks that are involved in generating proposals. And it's quite, so they have diversity not only in clients, but they have diversity in numbers of employees. And the 8 employees initially is now 50. By the way, we don't talk about in this weekly meeting, we don't talk about the financials at all, at least not directly. We talk about revenue and paid hours, because what we focus on is improving revenue per paid hour, because when revenue per paid hour improves, then everything works, okay? But we don't have to teach anybody about financials because they implicitly know, and that revenue per paid hour, you can see in this that the revenue per paid hour has improved. It was like 38 when we started in 2013. It's now about 62. So they're doing quite well. And so not only is the revenue per hour driving, but the diversity of the driving of the business to some extent is reflected by this, okay? They broadly are driving the business. For what it's worth, they haven't yet done the a broader ownership. They have some increase in number of folks that are now owners in the place, but they have not done an ESOP. Frankly, they could consider that, but they've made a huge progress in terms of people understanding and driving the business. So I'm gonna, I was hoping to save 15 minutes for a discussion about any questions you might have. Some immediate no-cost options. I'm cheap by nature, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna admit that. Okay, if my wife was here, she'd be nodding. Okay, she'd be, oh yeah. I'm not sure about everything else he said, but you're cheap, yeah, no question about it. Okay, there are some things that you can immediately apply and are no cost. Okay, one, you can ask any question you might have, and we're going to open it up for questions in a second. Number two is, I would strongly encourage you to try that customer interview script. If you don't already have a customer input mechanism, it will serve you well. I'm just telling you, it will. Next is, if you have, like Sandra, thank you for participating in the in our economic engagement survey. If you haven't, I would encourage you to do so. And frankly, if you have some other folks that you can invite to participate in that, that would be great. And then finally, you may remember back in there a ways, there are a variety of articles. We've written about 100 Forbes articles, about 7 Harvard Business Review articles, and we now write an article every other week for Inc. magazine. I think we've written about 10. I tried to highlight some of the most relevant ones in the presentation. But now I'm gonna stop the screen sharing and say, okay, so those are some things to consider. I wanna open it up and say, what would be helpful, folks? How can I address any questions you might have?